Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video, and in this video we're back with another cast reaction to a recently rumored cast, this time talking about The Amazing Race 38. Which is weird. I'm doing one of these for The Amazing Race, which again, typically I wouldn't really care enough to do one for these. But if you don't know, the season that's currently filming is a season containing all Big Brother teams, or at least teams with at least one Big Brother alumni. And because of that, again, why not do a cast reaction here? And I guess I'll also just generally talk about the concept of the season itself, which obviously, again, I'm personally interested in it. Obviously, again, being a Big Brother fan and also watching The Amazing Race, again, obviously these two things collide here to where obviously I would be interested in this concept. I do question why they're doing this though. Like, I know it's the 25th anniversary of Big Brother, and assumingly this is something that's going to be airing after episodes of Survivor 49, where again they need an Amazing Race season for later in the year. The question for me is why Big Brother in particular here, as again Survivor also is sharing a 25th anniversary this year, and again this is assumingly the show that's literally going to be airing after Survivor, where again you would think there would be a lot more crossover Survivor players. Mind you, obviously we know Survivor 50 is happening, and maybe they are saving up all those big names for Survivor 50, but I do feel like it is kind of a weird concept to be doing Big Brother in this spot, especially considering this is going to be like immediately after Big Brother season is over. And through that, I think they kind of also like locked themselves out having returnees for BB27, where I personally would be very surprised, especially considering some pretty big recent names are on this cast. The most likely people that I assume would have probably been on BB27 if it were to have returnees, to where I doubt they would be putting both on both shows, along the fact that also, again, like who knows what happens on BB27 if they were on BB27, to where it could make that person persona non grata. Would they really want to air a season of them on The Amazing Race immediately after that? To where again, I think there's a lot of reasons why at this point I feel pretty confident that we're probably not getting returnees for BB27, but again, I just find it weird that we're doing this here, and again, I'm interested in it. I'm definitely going to watch it. Though again, about the casting as a whole here, I'm a bit like underwhelmed a bit with the cast, simply because we've heard a lot of like really interesting names earlier on in the process, to where I personally was hoping some of those would make the cut, and I feel like ultimately we end up with a cast here that is essentially just a lot of recent players, and not many of those like really interesting names end up ultimately making it here, which I think is a bit disappointing, where it really just feels like, again, this is just a lot of the more popular recent players, and it's a cast that feels like it's very much lacking in terms of having like these Big Brother legends on. And to be fair, obviously we've had some of those on Amazing Race in the past, and we also have heard that a lot of them ended up turning it down due to low pay, and people like Daniel Reyes, Xavier, Josh Martinez, where again it's not shocking the caliber of people we got here, but I'll say it's a little bit underwhelming, especially considering certain teams that end up being chosen here are probably teams that I personally would have picked either. But again, we've heard about again Jen Johnson and Libra shockingly being people that were like pretty deep into the process that didn't get picked, which again is kind of mind-blowing to me. Again, Jen Johnson is someone that I personally would have loved to see. I thought it would have been a really cool old school returnee to come back to another show. Libra also someone that I really did not think CBS had on their radars at all. Again, Libra is someone that has openly called out production multiple times since season 2. I'm kind of surprised that they would consider Libra, but again, that would have been cool to see, but obviously, they didn't get picked. And also, we know the alternates, who are Corey and Zach, who, again, I personally would love to see here. So obviously, they had been campaigning to get on The Amazing Race, essentially ever since Corey got off of Big Brother, and again, there's fun personalities. I think they would have a really fun dynamic on the show, again, bickering constantly while also making quippy jokes, where again, I think they would have been great casting choices here, to where I'm kind of mind blown that they weren't ultimately picked. Though we do end up having a lot of brother teams on this season, which I don't think we need that many of them, but again, I personally would pick Corey and Zach over some of the ones we did get, but either way. But again, I will be running through each of the teams that are on the cast in alphabetical order of the alumni player, I guess that's the way I'm doing this. So let's start off with, unshockingly, Angela from BB26, who's here with her daughter Lexi. And kind of obviously, I mean, I felt like Angela was one of the biggest locks on the board. Obviously, a massive name coming from BB26. Someone that was very open to be willing to do pretty much any reality show. And her being here with one of her daughters, again, not shocking, and a dynamic that you're not really going to see that much in Big Brother. Again, being able to bring someone back that actually has a kid themselves that would be able to go in the race, to where, again, I think this is a very good pick here. To where I believe Lexi is also the daughter that they went on Dr. Phil for. She stopped talking to her dad for years, to where, again, I think there could be some drama from Lexi, and with Angela herself obviously being an incredible character as well. Again, obviously just kind of a no-brainer in terms of a pick here. Next up, keeping with BB26, we do got Chelsea, and Chelsea is here with her dad, Jack, And again, I know nothing about Jack himself. Again, I don't really have much of an opinion on that. But again, father-daughter duo here, and kind of usually a mixed bag on Amazing Race. Again, sometimes early boots, sometimes like later boots, but again, obviously don't ever win. And I wouldn't have much faith in Chelsea to go on to win this. But again, Chelsea's a fun personality, good and confessional. Not opposed to seeing her on Amazing Race. I also didn't need her on Amazing Race, though I'll say that something that is interesting about this is the fact that, as we'll talk about, each of the last 3 winners of Big Brother are on this cast, which I think is kind of interesting here. Potentially could have been 4 had Xavier said yes, to where, at least in terms of, again, recency, we are getting some of these like bigger names on the board. But again, Chelsea's someone that I'm fine with seeing here, but also someone I'm not particularly excited for either. But again, I kind of assumed that she would ultimately make the cut. Next up, moving on to Enzo with his brother Giacomo. Why is Enzo here? Where Enzo's actually the most old school player on the board here, the only person before BB18, where again, it's kind of insane that Enzo keeps on getting cast on all these shows, where I really don't get why CBS seems to love him so much. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to see him back for BB22. I thought that was an interesting return considering he had been on 10 seasons ago at that point. But then we saw him on the challenge. That was like, why is he here? And he proceeds to quit. And then now he's coming back for Amazing Race. Like, again, why is he on all these shows? Mind you, I do think he actually perfectly fits into the Amazing Race. I feel like Enzo definitely feels like a type of character you would see on Modern Amazing Race, where, again, I do think it actually makes sense considering the show, but I do just feel like in general, like, why are we just continuously seeing Enzo back over and over and over again? And obviously, again, I don't know anything about his brother, but I think this is a spot where, again, I would have much rather seen Corey and Zach back here instead of Enzo and his brother. I really don't care about Enzo and his brother. I don't know how many people are really clamoring to see Enzo back, though. Again, I get that they're like a very different archetype to the other brother pairs that we have on here, again, being a bit older, and again, Enzo very much being able to ham up in the confessional, where I get why they would want him, but again, not a pick I personally would have made. Next, then moving on to someone who was initially an alternate, though thankfully made the cast. That person is Hannah Chada, who's here with her sister Simone. Again, I'm happy Hannah's getting on another show here. I felt like Hannah was a really solid player on her original season. Obviously, essentially sacrificed her game for the cookout. And then in that time, ended up being an alternate for the Challenge USA, to where I was very disappointed to see her not make that. And again, now she's finally on The Amazing Race, which I think is probably a better show for her than the Challenge. So at least there's that. Realistically, I probably would have rather seen Hannah on like probably a more like strategy-focused show than Amazing Race. But I still think this should be fun. Now, I know nothing about her sister. I know nothing about their actual dynamic, or if her sister herself is an interesting personality, but again, I'm happy Hannah's here. And again, it was in a spot where Hannah was initially announced as an alternate, to which, again, I think that would have been a shame. Though, again, we are in a spot also where we have a lot of sister pairs, and I really don't know why, as I do feel like some of these sister pairs just feel very, like, samey. I feel like Hannah feels very different from the other two that we will end up talking about, but I just feel like we're getting so many of these sister pairs in a spot where it would have been nice to see a different type of dynamic on this season. But again, Hannah's probably the one that I'm probably the most excited to see of those 3. So again, at least there's that. Next, I'm moving on to probably one of the biggest surprises on the board, and someone that I'm pleasantly surprised to see. That person is Izzy, who's here for fiance Paige. And again, I'm very happy to see Izzy back. I mean, Izzy's someone that I thought was an incredible character in the first half of BB25, but also a character that was severely under-edited on the show, to where I was very worried that they just lost her number, that Izzy would just be kind of forgotten about over time. And again, I'm very happy to see her back on The Amazing Race. And to her, again, I think it makes a lot of sense here in the sense that obviously there's not many lesbian relationships that are in the casting pool from Big Brother, to where I think that probably helped Izzy out here. But again, I'm very happy it did. Again, Izzy's just such a fun personality. Also being someone that plays the game very aggressively, and while, again, obviously it's The Amazing Race through the grand scheme of things, but again, I could definitely see Izzy doing some underhanded tactics along the way that could be fun. Also along the fact that she can be pretty confrontational at points, to where, again, I think Izzy is someone that I'm personally very, very excited to see here. And from what I've seen of her fiance Paige, I think she's also a fine cast choice as well, to where, again, I'm actually really excited to see this duo here, and just, again, a spot where I just never expect them to actually be cast. Next, I'm moving on to one of the no-brainers. We got Jag with his brother Jazz, and obviously, again, I thought this was so apparent. Like, once we heard that there was going to be a Big Brother Amazing Race season, they were literally my first picks. I literally instantly called that Jag and Jazz would be my winner picks at the moment that this concept was announced. Now, again, that winner pick might have changed, as we'll talk about, but again, I do think Jag and Jazz here, again, kind of expected. Again, these 2 Sikh brothers, again, very unique sort of casting type here, that also seem like they would do pretty well on The Amazing Race, and also just kind of fit into what the modern like casting style of Amazing Race is, where again, Jag was just such a no-brainer to me here. And while again, I've obviously been a very outspoken critic of Jag's game, I do feel like Jag as a personality on The Amazing Race here makes a lot of sense. Next, moving on to one of the bigger surprises here, we got Joseph from BB24 here with his brother Adam, and this was so random to me. And again, I like Joseph. I know a lot of Twitter loves Joseph, and I'm sure a lot of people are super, super excited to see him here. But again, he was really not on my radar at all. I really did not expect Joseph to be back in this spot. Mind you, again, he obviously was like Hannah, an alternate for Challenge USA, to where he clearly was on their radars to some degree. But again, he was also an alternate even for his own season in BB24. And I just never expected him to actually end up being back on another CBS reality show. But again, like, he's fine. He's a purely affable guy, very likable. I don't know how entertaining he's necessarily going to be in The Amazing Race, but I'll say again, like, it is interesting to see these kind of set up alliances that could be forming here in the sense that we do, and that Joseph does have a decent amount of friends on this cast, where we should see how those dynamics play. Again, just in general with Joseph himself, I think he's fine, but he's not someone I'm particularly like excited about, though I am happy to see Joseph be able to get another shot in another reality show. Next up, moving on to another one of the big surprises, but someone that I am more pleasantly excited to see here, and that person is Kat Dunn, here for her boyfriend Alex. And Kat Dunn is someone that, again, I was shocked to not see Kat more in the running for other shows in the year since Big Brother, where, while, again, now it's been almost 6 years since her initial season, and we're finally seeing her back. And man, I'm excited to see that. Again, I think she was a really fun personality. I think she's someone that came off one of the most likable people from BB21, which is obviously a cast that had very unlikable people. And I think this is an interesting team to have here in the sense that this is one of the few non-blood related teams on this season. So at least that's something. Overall, Kat is someone that, again, I personally would have probably picked someone like Jen Johnson or Libra over Kat. I'm still excited to see Kat here. I think she is a really interesting casting choice of someone that, again, I thought was pretty inspired choice, even though, again, it wasn't someone that was necessarily on my radar. Next up, moving on to Kyllen from BB23, who is partnered with Taylor Hale, the winner of BB24. And this is so strange. Again, this is the only pair in the entire cast that is made up of 2 Big Brother players. And spot where I'll mention the fact that I'm shocked that Jared and Suri are not on here, though, again, maybe Survivor 50 played a factor in that, but again, I very much expect them to be here. But either way, Kyllen and Taylor was just such a random combo to me in the sense that obviously we knew that they were in some sort of relationship over the last few months. I never saw their relationship as something that was taken seriously, where, again, I did not expect them to be in a serious enough relationship to be willing to go on The Amazing Race together. And to be fair, I mean, we saw Eric and Danielle go on The Amazing Race and Amazing Race All-Stars, and by that point they had already broken up and they barely even dated to begin with. But still, I mean, I'm kind of surprised they end up going with Taylor and Kyllen here, but also, again, makes sense that, again, if they couldn't get partners for either of them, that, again, obviously they would very much want Taylor, and Kyllen's a good partner for her. Now, mind you, I'll also mention the fact that I'm surprised Taylor's here in the sense that she was very much rumored for Traitors, to where, again, I was expecting her to be on Traitors season 4 more so than this, but to be fair, I'm sure she'll get that Traitors call again down the road. It's not like this is the only opportunity for Traitors, while this might be the only opportunity for Amazing Race, even though it's probably paying her less money. But again, I think this is an exciting duo. I do think it is weird, though. Again, they are the only team made up of entirely Big Brother players, where, again, I wish there was a little bit more consistency in that. Really, I wish there was actually just, again, a season made up of just Big Brother players entirely. Again, I would not have been opposed to that. I mean, I think it actually probably would have been more fun. And to be fair, again, it seems like they maybe were having some trouble getting people, considering the low amount of pay they were willing to pay people. But still, again, I think it would have been cool to have an entire cast of Big Brother players. But in that world, I think this choice would have been less egregious. But again, in this world that we have here, Kyllen and Taylor do seem very primed to do very well here, where, again, I did switch my winner pick off of Jack and Jazz to Kyllen and Taylor. Kyllen's someone that, again, I can assure you Kyllen has everything memorized about Amazing Race in this spot, knows every winner, knows how they won, what they did, all these different strats. Again, that is the type of person Kyllen is. He does so much research coming into whatever show he does, and considering the fact that most recent Amazing Race winners are people that came in extremely prepared. And he's also, again, friends with Derek and Claire, to where I'm sure that may help him as well, to where, again, I think Kyllen's coming into the season super prepared, while Taylor herself is someone that just seems like she would do well in Amazing Race as well, to where, again, I think this is a really lethal duo, to where, again, I would very much expect them to be one of the front runners on this season. Next up, moving on to Natalie Negrotti, who's here for Sister Stephanie. Why is she here? I think this is so random. And to be fair, again, it's further back in the show's history, to where at least there's that. Again, outside of Enzo, she is the furthest back player to be on this season, so that's something to note here. But really, I think this is just so random. So I wasn't really expecting Natalie Negrotti on this season, and to be fair, I mean, like, again, we'll talk about another similar team to Natalie Negrotti and her sister, and I think that team is one that I'm a bit more perplexed over why they're here, especially in that formation. But either way, again, Natalie's someone that is fine. She's purely affable. Like, I have no issues with Natalie Negrotti. Again, we obviously saw her on the challenge, and again, she was fine enough TV there, but I also feel like she's someone that I never really needed to see back on any show. And I feel like this is like a pairing that's like, I would have much rather see Jen Johnson or Libra on here over Natalie Negrati, but again, she's fine. But that's what I'm particularly excited for. Next up, moving on to the pair I was referring to, we got Rabina with her sister Christine. Why is she here? And more so, why is she here in this formation? Again, like, why is she here for her sister? I think this is kind of weird, especially because, again, we have so many sister pairs already. Also, I feel like she's the least interesting of them, to where, again, I personally would have liked to see, again, Hannah and Natalie Negrati on another show than Rabina, where I feel like Rabina really brought almost nothing to BB26. Now, obviously, again, it's a lot of recency bias, and Rabina, to be fair to her, again, is supposedly a big Amazing Race fan, wanted to be on the Amazing Race before she was recruited for Big Brother, to where, again, it does feel like this spot where this is what she genuinely wants to do more so, and at least there's something there. And again, Rabina also feels like a very like Amazing Race style casting choice, where in that sense it makes a lot of sense, but also I just feel like Rabina really brought nothing to the table for me on Big Brother, to where if you were going to have Rabina, I think the way to have her is to pair her up with a certain person we're going to be talking about, where I think that would have made a lot more sense to me. But again, in this world where she's here with her sister, it just like feels like a spot where I'm just like questioning, like, why is Rabina here? Why is Rabina being cast for another reality show? I just don't feel like Rabina is that interesting enough of a personality to warrant being brought back in any sense. But anyway, then we move on to the aforementioned person. We got Tucker and his brother Eric, which again, obviously Tucker was going to be on. Massive fan favorite from BB26, the last season. I think any future season that has a Big Brother returnee from a CBS point of view, I would expect Tucker to be on it. So again, if there was just one returnee for BB27, I assumed it would have been Tucker. That being said, again, why is he here for his brother Eric? I think that's also kind of a waste. Again, it's a spot where, again, we already have so many other brother pairings. I don't know why we need another one in Tucker and Eric, especially when, again, you have Tucker and Rabina right there. Again, they're literally dating right now, which is a weird dynamic, right? The fact that you have these two people that are dating on separate teams. I don't feel like we've ever seen that before, but also feels like another one. Again, we're just getting another team in the same sort of archetype. I personally would have been a lot more excited had this been Tucker and Rabina as a team together. I think that would have been really interesting to see their relationship be tested out and play off of what we already saw in BB26, but instead we have to have them both separately paired up with their siblings, which again feels like kind of a wasted slot to me. Again, I feel like I definitely would have rearranged a lot of these teams on this season to where I think when we're looking at the alumni field, it's not the worst in the world. Like, I think it's a very like solid enough alumni field. However, I do feel like the actual picks being made here and who is partnered with who and the type of dynamics they end up bringing to the show just leave a lot to be desired, in my opinion, where again, us getting another brother and brother team here just feels like a bit overkill, even though, again, Tucker was just obviously going to be on this season. And with that, we then get to the final team from the season. We have the return of Turner from BB24 alongside his wife, Megan. And I actually feel like this is actually a pretty good pick. I actually think this is a solid one. Again, as I've been criticizing a lot of the pairings beforehand, I actually feel like Turner being here and a fine enough character from Big Brother, but also here with his wife, who from what I remember was pretty fun on social media during BB24. And they seem to have a pretty good relationship, where again, I think they're a pretty decent pick here. Which again, also nice to have less blood relationships on this season, considering there's so many of them. Where again, at least we got another couple here to where, and I think Turner and his wife here were pretty inspired choices, not necessarily people that were like top of mind for me when thinking about the concept of this season, though I think when I saw them being more in the room, I thought it made a lot more sense. But there we go. I mean, that is my reaction to the cast of The Amazing Race 38. Now, obviously, again, when the season airs, I'll be doing a review of it, so that'll be something. Also beyond that, obviously, we have Amazing Race 37 currently airing. I'll be doing a review of that. Obviously, outside that, we got Australian Survivor, Survivor US, Challenge All-Stars, and so many things. Also, I do have an Amazing Race 7 retrospective coming out at some point. It was supposed to be next week, but because of me making this video, it actually got bumped another week. So again, stay tuned for it in 2 weeks, I guess. But either way, those are my opinions on the cast of The Amazing Race 38. Thank you for watching.